Hey there, friends. How's it going? So, quick lesson today as I follow up with my practical music theory course, where I want to talk about the major scale and the notes that are in each major key. Now, we came off of the 12 notes in the previous lesson, right? The building blocks of everything. The great thing about this major scale concept is, number one, we're going to use this in virtually every song we play is going to be in one key or another. So understanding the notes in each key are really important. But the other cool thing about this is every major scale has just 7 notes. So before we had these 12 notes that are the building blocks, but we're going to get rid of almost half of those notes and just say, hey, whatever song we're in a certain key, that key has 7 notes. It just makes the world a lot simpler, a lot easier to wrap your head around, and it's sort of a helpful way to understand things, right? And the other thing that's helpful to keep in mind with this is that even though there are 12 different major keys, each of which has its own unique set of notes, every major scale follows one pattern. And if we learn this one pattern and we just sort of, it helps to memorize it or be aware of it, it's going to be so helpful of an aid as we move forward and as we run into different sort of problem-solving things with melodies or chords or scales in the future, okay? So let's talk about the major scale and get on into this, okay? Now, it works like this. From any note, if we use any note as our starting point and we follow this pattern, we get a major scale. And the pattern is going a whole step, and a half step. Then we go a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, a half step. Okay? Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. So in the key of C, for example, that would be a C, a D, an E, an F, a G, an A, B, and a C. Those are the notes in the C major scale. I play them all on the 5th string here, but you also could play them using multiple strings. Now, in future lessons, in a future course, I'll talk about how to play the major scale. In this one, I want to talk about the pattern and just help you understand the concept that is determining what are the notes, okay? The important part, again, is that same pattern, if we use any other note as a starting point, it's going to give us the major scale for that key, and it's going to sound qualitatively the same, right? This is what a G major scale sounds like. This is what an A major scale sounds like. Here's what an E major scale sounds like. Right? No matter which key we're in, the major scales all kind of have the same qualitative sound. Now, how do we use a major scale? We're going to cover it in future lessons, but there's going to be a few big stars here. Number one is melodies, right? The things you hum. The melodies for any song you're playing are going to come from the major scale of the key you're in, right? The biggest example of this that I can think of is Joy to the World, the Christmas song. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. That run, it actually uses every note in the major scale, just starting at the top and going down. All I did right there is play a C major scale going backwards. C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C, right? And you could do that in a different key. Say the singer's like, play that in G. Well, I just play my G. Okay, got my G major scale. G, F sharp, E, D, C, B, A, G, right? So melodies are one example of how the major scale comes in handy. Another one is for chords, right? The chords in every major key are based off of the notes in that key, right? You're going to learn about, in future lessons, I'll teach you how the 1, the 4, and the 5, for example, are the major chords in any key. So our C, our F, and our G, you might notice those chords used a lot. All I'm doing is playing the 3 major chords based off of the 1, the 4, and the 5, as far as the first note, the 4th note, and the 5th note in whatever key we're in. So if we're in the key of A, well, my first note is A, my 4th note is D, my 5th note is E. So I can play A, D major, and E major, and that's going to be my 1, 4, and 5 chords, right? plenty more to tackle on this topic in future lessons. But again, the major scale is what is determining this stuff. And all those chords are built using the notes in each key. Okay? One other quick point before we move on to the next lesson here is talking about when to use sharps and when to use flats. You might notice that some of these scales I've looked at have sharps in them. Why wouldn't I use flats? Like, is there a rule? Well, there actually is a convention or a sort of rule we can follow here. The main idea is that every major scale is going to have the letters A through G exactly one time. If we ignore the sharps and the flats, look at this table and notice how every scale has an A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. The starting points are going to be different, but there's never going to be any of those letters twice in any of these rows, right? That's a helpful thing to follow. So, and understand too that every one of these scales is following the same pattern. So effectively, we take any starting note, we follow this pattern. That's going to help inform whether a key uses sharps or uses flats. Now, here's the deal. This is a lot in this table. You don't need to memorize this. When you're playing guitar, there's only 5 keys that you're going to be playing in a majority of the time. Your key of C, your key of G, your key of D, your key of A, and your key of E. These are major keys where the chords in these keys are relatively easy to play on the guitar, right? I assume that that's why they're named with no sharps and flats. It like keeps things nice and simple. Notice how the 1, the 4, and the 5 chords, or the notes number 1, 4, and 5 in each of these keys, don't have any sharps and flats either. So it lets you play the most common chords without any sharps and flats. This keeps things generally approachable as we learn guitar, right? So in future lessons, we're going to talk about scale degrees, how we can number the notes in each scale, and all that sort of thing. But for now, just keep in mind everything I showed you, right? Understand that every major scale kind of qualitatively sounds the same. You're going to have the letters A through G exactly once, right? All the melodies and chords in any major key are going to come out of the major scale, okay? And a final point is notice how the 3rd and 4th note of every major scale are a half step away. They're 1 note away. And likewise, when you're on the 7th tone of the scale, you go up a half step and you get back to the 1. So the 7 and the 1 are a half step away, and the 3 and the 4 are a half step away. That's really important because it helps you understand that every other note in the scale is a whole step away. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's going to come in handy, even if you're soloing, and we know like, oh, this is our home bass note. This is our 1. I can know if this is my 1, I can just go down a half step, and this is my 7. I don't know the name of this note, but I know it's the 1. And if I know this is the 1, then I know I can go 1, 2, 3, right? I just went up a whole step and a whole step to my 3. And if I'm on my 3, the 4 is just a half step away. Okay, so lots of benefit can come out of just being aware of this pattern, all right? But let's move on ahead into the next lesson here and put all this to use. Make sure you get the PDF cheat sheet. If you want to sort of keep track of the notes in each major scale, this PDF cheat sheet has you covered. It also has that pattern about whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. It is worth keeping an eye on, being aware of, because at a certain point, it's going to set off those light bulbs and you're going to want to run with it, all right? But let's get on into the next topic. I'll see you there.